Welcome to Searching the Scriptures. Our Bible teacher will be Gunther von Harringa Sr. So without further ado, let's look into God's Word, the Bible.
Good evening and welcome to Searching the Scriptures. This is going to be Thine Only Son Isaac Part 6, and today's date is July 28th, 2016. I'll go ahead and read this account, which is found in Genesis 22, 1 through 18. And it came to pass after these things that God did tempt or test Abraham, and said unto him, Abraham. And he said, Behold, here I am. And he said, Take now thy son, thine only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. And Abraham rose up early in the morning, and saddled his ass, and took 2 of his young men with him, and Isaac his son, and clave the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up and went unto the place of which God had told him. Then on the 3rd day Abraham lifted up his eyes, and saw the place afar off. And Abraham said unto his young men, Abide ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship, and come again to you. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering, and laid it upon Isaac his son. And he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and they went both of them together. And Isaac spake unto Abraham his father, and said, My father. And he said, Here am I, my son. And he said, Behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? And Abraham said, My son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So they went both of them together, and they came to the place which God had told him of. And Abraham built an altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand, and took the knife to slay his son. And the angel of Jehovah called unto him out of heaven, and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes, and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram, and offered him up for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. And Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah-Jireh, as it is said to this day, In the mount of Jehovah it shall be seen. And the angel of Jehovah called unto Abraham out of heaven the 2nd time, and said, By myself have I sworn, saith Jehovah, for because thou hast done this thing, and hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, that in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore. And thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice. So far in our study of Genesis 22, we've come down to verse 5, which says, And Abraham said unto his young men, Abide ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship, and come again to you. The sacrifice of a burnt offering was indeed an act of worship, as Abraham indicated to his young men. Abraham was so confident that God could raise Isaac from the dead that he assured the young men, "I and the lad will come again to you." The Hebrew word rendered "and worship," which is Strong's number 7812, means to bow down. And in fact, it is translated "and bowed" in Genesis 18:12, when Abraham prostrates himself before Almighty God, who appeared to him in the form of 3 men. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door and bowed himself toward the ground. Genesis 19:1 records a similar scene in which Abraham's nephew Lot bows before 2 of the same 3 men, representing the Trinity, that had appeared to Abraham in Genesis 18:12. By the way, the context in verses 16 to 22 clarifies this fact. And there came 2 angels or messengers to Sodom at even. And Lot sat in the gate of Sodom. And Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. God also laid down this divine stipulation in Exodus 34:14, where this word is rendered as, "For thou shalt worship. For thou shalt worship no other God, for Jehovah, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God." In 2 Chronicles 29, these same words, worship and burnt offering, also appear, further confirming their importance and relationship. In fact, this account concerns the reign of one of the good kings of Judah, King Hezekiah. And I'll go ahead and read from verse 1 down to verse 30. Hezekiah began to reign when he was 25 years old, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Abijah, the daughter of Zechariah. And he did that which was right in the sight of Jehovah, according to all that David his father had done. He, in the first year of his reign, in the first month, opened the doors of the house of Jehovah and repaired them. And he brought in the priests and the Levites, and gathered them together into the east street, and said unto them, Hear me, ye Levites, sanctify now yourselves, and sanctify the house of Jehovah God of your fathers, and carry forth the filthiness out of the holy place. For our fathers have trespassed, and done that which was evil in the eyes of Jehovah our God, and have forsaken him, and have turned away their faces from the habitation of Jehovah, and turned their backs. Also they have shut up the doors of the porch, and put out the lamps, and have not burned incense, nor offered burnt offerings. And this word burnt offerings is 59:30. And have not burnt incense, nor offered burnt offerings in the holy place unto the God of Israel. Wherefore the wrath of Jehovah was upon Judah and Jerusalem, and he had delivered them to trouble, to astonishment, and to hissing, as ye see with your eyes. For lo, our fathers have fallen by the sword, and our sons and our daughters and our wives are in captivity for this. Now it is in mine heart to make a covenant with Jehovah God of Israel, that his fierce wrath may turn away from us. My sons, be not now negligent, for Jehovah hath chosen you to stand before him, to serve him, and that ye should minister unto him and burn incense. Then the Levites arose, Mahath the son of Amasai, and Joel the son of Azariah, of the sons of the Kohathites, And of the sons of Merari, Kish, the son of Abdi, and Azariah, the son of Jehalelel, can't say it, Jehalelel. And of the Gershonites, Joah, the son of Zimmah, and Eden, the son of Joah, and the sons of Elizaphan, Shimri and Jael, and of the sons of Asaph, Zechariah and Mattaniah, and of the sons of Heman, Jehael and Shimei, and of the sons of Jeduthun, Shemaiah and Uzziel. And they gathered their brethren and sanctified themselves and came according to the commandment of the king, by the words of Jehovah, to cleanse the house of Jehovah. And the priests went into the inner part of the house of Jehovah to cleanse it, and brought out all the uncleanness that they found in the temple of Jehovah into the court of the house of Jehovah. And the Levites took it to carry it abroad into the brook Kidron. Now they began on the first day of the first month to sanctify, and on the 8th day of the month came they to the porch of Jehovah. So they sanctified the house of Jehovah in 8 days. And in the 16th day of the first month they made an end. Then they went into Hezekiah the king and said, We have cleansed all the house of Jehovah, and the altar of burnt offering. Again, 59:30. With all the vessels thereof, and the showbread table with all the vessels thereof. Moreover, all the vessels which King Ahaz in his reign did cast away in his transgression have we prepared and sanctified, and behold, they are before the altar of Jehovah. Then Hezekiah the king rose early and gathered the rulers of the city and went up to the house of Jehovah. And they brought 7 bullocks and 7 rams and 7 lambs and 7 he-goats for a sin offering for the kingdom and for the sanctuary and for Judah. And he commanded the priests, the sons of Aaron, to offer them on the altar of Jehovah. So they killed the bullocks, and the priests received the blood and sprinkled it on the altar. They killed also the lambs, and they sprinkled the blood upon the altar. And they brought forth the he-goats for the sin offering before the king and the congregation, and they laid their hands upon them. And the priests killed them, and they made reconciliation with their blood upon the altar, to make an atonement for all Israel. For the king commanded that the burnt offering and the sin offering should be made for all Israel. And he set the Levites in the house of Jehovah with cymbals, with psalteries, and with harps, according to the commandment of David, and of Gad the king's seer, and Nathan the prophet, for so was the commandment of Jehovah by his prophets. And the Levites stood with the instruments of David, and the priests with the trumpets. And Hezekiah commanded to offer the burnt offering upon the altar. And when the burnt offering began, the song of Jehovah began also with the trumpets, and with the instruments ordained by David, king of Israel. And all the congregation worshipped, and the singers sang, and the trumpeters sounded. And all this continued until the burnt offering was finished. And when they had made an end of offering, the king and all that were present with him bowed themselves and worshipped. Moreover, Hezekiah the king and the princes commanded the Levites to sing praise unto Jehovah with the words of David and of Asaph the seer. And they sang praises with gladness, and they bowed their heads and worshiped. So in this chapter, we find 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, actually 9 times that this word a burnt offering, or it's also translated as worship twice, but it's the same. It's not the same. It's twice as worship, which is 78:12, and 7 times as the burnt offering, which is 59:30. No, I take it back. It was 6. Let me do this again. See, burnt offering is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, 59:30, and then 3 times as worship. Okay, I think I got it right. Now, the last phrase in Genesis 22:5 reads, "And come again to you." The same word, "and come again," is Strong's number 7225, and it's rendered as "I will return" in Genesis 18:14. Since this word was uttered by God himself in connection with the miraculous birth of Isaac, it is especially meaningful that he chose to utilize it again as Abraham promises to return to his young men after he and Isaac worship. I'll read Genesis 18:10 through 14 in order to pick up the context. "And he said," and this is the Godhead, "I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life. And lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent door which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also? And Jehovah said unto Abraham, Wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I of a surety bear a child which am old? Is anything too hard for Jehovah? At the time appointed I will return unto thee, according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. Furthermore, Abraham by God's grace did return to his young men as he had promised, according to Genesis 22:19. So Abraham returned unto his young men, and they rose up and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham dwelt at Beersheba. In the time we have remaining, let's examine verse 6, which teaches, And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering, and laid it upon Isaac his son, and he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and they went both of them together. Here again we see the number 3 in view, pointing to the purpose of God, by the following 3 objects: the wood, the fire, and the knife. You might recall that in a previous lesson we looked at the 3rd day of this 3-day journey to Mount Moriah in verse 4. Additionally, God makes a point of referring to Isaac as thy son, thine only son, 3 times in verses 2, verse 12, and verse 16. In verse 6, we also learned that the wood is laid upon Isaac. However, in verse 9, it is Isaac that is laid upon the wood. And they came to the place which God had told him of, and Abraham built an altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. The wood is Strong's number 6086, and the term "and laid" is 7760. In 1 Kings 18:21-40, we also find the same words, the wood and laid, in verses 23 and 33 of this unique historical parable. And Elijah came unto all the people and said, How long halt ye between 2 opinions? If Jehovah be God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him. And the people answered him not a word. Then said Elijah unto the people, I, even I only, remain a prophet of Jehovah. But Baal's prophets are 450 men. Let them therefore give us 2 bullocks, and let them choose 1 bullock for themselves, and cut it in pieces, and lay it on wood, and put no fire under. And I will dress the other bullock, and lay it on wood, and put no fire under. And call ye on the name of your gods, and I will call on the name of Jehovah. And the God that answereth by fire, let him be God. And all the people answered and said, It is well spoken. And Elijah said unto the prophets of Baal, Choose you 1 bullock for another, and dress it first, for ye are many, and call on the name of your gods, but put no fire under. And they took the bullock which was given them, and they dressed it, and called on the name of Baal from morning even until noon, saying, O Baal, hear us. But there was no voice, nor any that answered. And they leaped upon the altar which was made. And it came to pass at noon that Elijah mocked them, and said, Cry aloud, for he is a god. Either he is talking, or he is pursuing, or he is in a journey, or peradventure he sleepeth, and must be awaked. And they cried aloud, and cut themselves after their manner with knives and lancets, till the blood gushed out upon them. And it came to pass, when midday was past, and they prophesied until the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, that there was neither voice, nor any to answer, nor any that regarded. And Elijah said unto all the people, Come near unto me. And all the people came near unto him. And he repaired the altar of Jehovah that was broken down. And Elijah took 12 stones, according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, unto whom the word of Jehovah came, saying, Israel shall be thy name. And with the stones he built an altar in the name of Jehovah. And he made a trench about the altar, as great as would contain 2 measures of seed. And he put the wood in order, and cut the bullock in pieces, and laid him on the wood, and said, Fill 4 barrels with water, and pour it on the burnt sacrifice, and on the wood. And he said, Do it the 2nd time. And they did it the 2nd time. And he said, Do it the 3rd time. And they did it the 3rd time. And the water ran about the altar, and he filled the trench also with water. And it came to pass at the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice that Elijah the prophet came near, and said, Jehovah God of Abraham, Isaac, and of Israel, let it be known this day that thou art God in Israel, and that I am thy servant, and that I have done all these things at thy word. Hear me, O Jehovah, hear me, that this people may know that thou art Jehovah God, and that thou hast turned their heart back again. Then the fire of Jehovah fell, and consumed the burnt sacrifice, and the wood, and the stones, and the dust, and licked up the water that was in the trench. And when all the people saw it, they fell on their faces, and they said, Jehovah, he is the God. Jehovah, he is the God. And Elijah said unto them, Take the prophets of Baal, let none of them escape. Let not one of them escape. And they took them, and Elijah brought them down to the brook Kishon, and slew them there. Lord willing, in our next study, we will continue to search out what God might teach us in this magnificent historical parable here in Genesis 22.
Thank you for joining us today for Searching the Scriptures. Until next time, To God be the glory.